Good morning, everyone. I am Ian Murray. I'm the president of SpotOn Productions, and we are doing another episode of the SpotOn Spotlight, where we have candid conversations with leaders in the business and video community. I'm really excited about our guest today. Today we have Dani Redder, who is joining us with the Sherpa Library.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks for having me.
I am very excited about this topic because accountability is something that I know I could continue to do some work on in my own life. Looking forward to the content. I have to put a plug in here. So I've known Dani for quite a while. Let's see, there we go. It's not, there we go, Sherpa. Sherpa was one of the very first paid clients we ever had here at SpotOn Productions. So we have a long history together. So I'm really excited to have you kind of share some of that knowledge that you guys have been building over a really long time to make the Sherpa Library.
Indeed. Ian takes it back old school with that chara, but thank you for that. And again, thank you for having me here, Ian.
Is that what it's called, a chara? I was thinking it's just like a little stress ball or what do they call them, tchotchkes or?
The Tibetan gift, the Tibetan name for a gift is a chara. So that's what we call them in the Sherpa world.
That's awesome. See, I'm learning something every day.
Always.
So Dani, tell me a little bit about kind of your journey as a coach, becoming the CEO of the Sherpa Library, and what is the Sherpa Library?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I like to say that I was born into this. My parents started Sherpa coaching back in the 2000s. I watched them build this company from the ground up. In 2015, I decided to jump into the family business. I got my coaching certification from the University of Georgia. And I worked just all the different kinds of roles that I could in Sherpa. So fast forward to today, I now am teaching that class with my amazing colleague, Dekafet Ward at the University of Georgia. And so we teach people, we certify people how to become executive coaches, as well as with the Sherpa Library, we've launched that. This company really helps us license programs. It offers white labeling programs for clients where we still also do, one-on-one executive coaching, group coaching, and leadership programs for teams still. So that's where we're at now.
So that's huge that you guys have really grown this to be kind of a pinnacle in corporate coaching, doing the education programs within universities, as well as kind of creating that standard for what corporate coaching looks like.
Absolutely. Yeah. We really want our clients to become self-sustainable. So that's why we like to, we teach a lot of people internally how to become coaches through that certification so they can just be a well-oiled machine and get their corporations running.
Excellent. So kind of moving from that into today's topic, how do you define accountability? Accountability, I think, is a word that's thrown around a lot. How do you define accountability, and why is it so critical for business leaders when it comes to managing people?
Yeah, absolutely. So accountability is one of my favorite topics to talk about. You might see some intimidation by passion, another Sherpa thing that we talk about. But accountability, we define it as activities within a system that may be traced uniquely. So really, who's responsible for what are you actually responsible for? And we really like to make the difference between responsibility and accountability. So accountability is making sure that the job gets done. Responsibility is just doing that job. Okay. So you've got to understand the components that make up accountability too. So that is, what am I accountable for? Who am I accountable to and for, and what holds me back from being accountable? So that's where we really kind of hang out in accountability in Sherpa land.
So along the lines of those three kind of key points, what are some of the common challenges that business leaders face when they're trying to hold their teams accountable, and how can they effectively address those challenges in accountability?
Yeah, so first of all, we use this analogy of the accountability house when we teach this to our clients. And really we use that analogy of the house because it's looking at what do I own versus what I rent. Okay. So you really want to look with your team, and really talk about when you go into the part where you're looking at what am I accountable for, is really how important is this task and how passionate am I about this task. And so that's just one aspect of it, but that's a really helpful area to begin with.
So tell me a little bit more about that. Passion. What if they're not passionate for something, but it's something that they need to be accountable for?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why it's such a powerful activity to do with your team. So, Ian, we could list all of your job duties and descriptions, so the production part, the camera part, all of that. You might be high importance, high passion, right? So we know that's going to be top of your to-do list. However, when we get down to the nitty-gritty part, maybe like reporting or something like that. So you might be really, it's high importance, but low passion with that. So we'd look at that and we'd say, is this somebody you could delegate? Is this something that you could delegate to somebody else? Is this something that, how could you be more passionate about it? Let's look at the different angles with that. How can we make this worth it to you? And the same goes with if you have a task that's really not important, but you are really passionate about it, we know that you're probably spending too much time there. So when we talk about that, with the team and just with my clients is, how do we make this stuff worth it? How do we make, of course, not everything's going to be 5 out of 5, right, but how do we make it worth it to you?
So what are a few strategies that business leaders can use to foster that sense of accountability within their teams? So
I would say the biggest part is you address, what is holding your team back from being accountable, number one. So that could be things like fear, just fear of looking incompetent, so you're not speaking up, being accountable for your actions, fear of success, fear of failure, blaming others is a big one. We talk about something called true outcomes, which is really the concept of your truth is not the truth. So looking at what that means to you. And then also the fact of comfort zones. So are you hanging out too much in your comfort zone? Or, are you not pushing yourself out of your comfort zone enough? Are you panicked and living out of your comfort zone all of the time? So a lot of components kind of factor into accountability. And another big thing I would say is, as a leader, make sure you're asking questions for accountability.
I was just going to say, yeah, it sounds like questions is a really key part of that, to understand maybe something that as a leader we don't see with people. But, what's like that one question you mentioned, what's holding you back, or where do you maybe not feel comfortable?
Yeah. How could you have done that differently? How powerful is a question like that as a leader when something doesn't go the right way? What does that look like if you were to do that? So just really crafting your questions differently to ask for accountability from your team.
What are like 2 or 3 just good questions or question words that can help kind of start those conversations on accountability?
Yeah, like you said, so, here's, for example, how could you have done that differently?
Okay.
What does that look like? What are your next steps? Really staying away from why. So we don't want to ask our team, why didn't you do that properly, Ian?
See, that's what a question that's one of those I was like, okay, so tell me why this didn't happen, or
what happens
don't do that.
When you ask the question why?
People get defensive, probably.
Exactly. So really making sure we're not saying, hey, why didn't you do that correctly, Ian? It's more like, what happened there, Ian?
So open-ended questions that are really seeking to get more information without putting people in the defense.
Exactly. And just, you're asking questions for clarity, and you're using kindness. Our definition of leadership is kindness with clarity. So you are coming in with the intention that you're going to ask them, hey, what happened there, Ian? Versus, why didn't that get done? Do you see the difference in the nuance of the language? So that's why questions are critical.
And I like that piece too, because this is something my mom's always told me, is clear is kind. So the more we can be clear, the more kind it is to the people that we work with.
Maybe Carrie inspired that definition.
I don't know. She might have. Who knows?
I love it.
So how can leaders balance, in that accountability questioning space, providing support and ensuring accountability without, coming down too hard? Really that balance of keeping people on track and motivated, but not making them feel like you're always breathing down their neck and maybe micromanaging them on accountability.
Yeah, so that's where I really recommend to leaders that you do things like we discussed a little bit before, where it's really listing out your tasks from the biggest thing that you were hired to the littlest tiny detail of kind of minutia tasks that you have to do. And really discussing with your team, hey, how important is this for you and how passionate are you about it? Because then you get this really clear sense of, what are they even doing here? And then you look at that as a team and you can really say, okay, now I know Ian's in charge of this. I'm in charge of this. I'm not going to try and, do that for Ian. I'm not going to take that from him. I'm going to make sure that I have those lines and those boundaries. So does that help answer that question?
I think so. Very much so. So what if you've got somebody, let's say Tim. Tim's having problems getting stuff done. Where do you start? Where's the best place to start working with Tim to say, Tim, there's stuff that's not getting done that's part of your accountability. How do we talk to Tim or frame that to get that accountability started?
Yeah. So again, if you're using the Sherpa tool, in the accountability house, we have the living room area, which is what I was talking about with what is holding you back, Tim. Mm-hmm. So that's where I really, as the coach with Tim, you of course have some information on him, what drives and what motivates him and all these things, right? You've had some conversations, but really seeing, Tim, what is holding you back here? Is it a comfort zone thing? Is Tim, he's so happy doing the little tasks that he's doing that he's never reaching out and doing the hard thing that he's asked of? Or is Tim really afraid of speaking up in a meeting? And so there's a fear there, that he might do the wrong thing. If he's somebody that really likes to do the right thing, he may be holding himself back just from fear. And then, the true outcome version of that is, again, your truth is not the truth. Tim may think that, hey, I'm doing all the right stuff here. What's wrong there? And then you bring in some perceptions from his team saying, actually, Tim, that's not what people are seeing, though, from you. And you have that conversation. And, yeah.
So is that where you kind of balance here's where we are see that you're trying, on your truth that you're doing this well, but globally or overall, this is where there's still a gap. Do you get into the gap piece?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So what's up with that, Tim? What's stopping you from doing that? What's the disconnect? And that's where you go back to that important passion factor. I can tell you right now, Ian, there's something about that would stop Tim from doing that task. It's either it's not important for him, he doesn't care about it, he's not passionate about it. And so you have that conversation. A lot of coaching is just really to push people to have the dialogue with their team, the conversation, because you think you're communicating so well, but really there's so much left unsaid.
Is casting a vision part of that accountability to help them see the future state so that they know kind of where they're trying to get to?
Absolutely. So, when we facilitate these accountability workshops, that's where you can start. Is, hey, team, here's our future state. And, this is what our current state is. And then you have that hard conversation as what does this really look like now? And what are we going to do to get to our future state?
So let's say accountability is maybe something that's not been heavily leaned into inside an organization or even just within a manager's team. What steps can a leader take to start cultivating that culture of self-accountability among their employees?
Again, I'm going to lean on that questions. Ask your staff questions. Ask them to own things, because so many times, I can't tell you, Ian, how many clients I see, they want to own everything. And they do the royal we. So what did we do wrong here? What does that do to somebody when you say that?
Makes them feel that they don't have their own accountability for their portion of it?
Absolutely. And you're grouping us all. We're all doing it. We're all not doing this task when it was that person's task to do.
So the day and sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just saying, the day and age, everybody, it seems like there's this pressure to bring that team dynamic, to say, we win as a team, we fail as a team. But what I hear you saying is really inside the team, we still need to hold people accountable for their individual contributions that make the team successful overall.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. We've all been conditioned to do the royal we. We're a team. We go together. We lose together. We do all these things together. But really, if you want to empower people as a leader, what does it look like to really ask them, hey, what happened there? And then get the next sentence. It's always, you're asking questions to get the next sentence, to really get clarity around what is going on here. And then I'm going to tell you, the next workshop that we do with your team is how to set expectations properly so that you as a leader are really setting the right expectations for your team in order for them to follow through with that accountability.
Very nice. How do you keep it from being, how do you keep it from having people feel like they're being attacked?
Well, I would say stay away from that why question that we talked about. I would say number 2, do not keep it personal. Is it personal? Is it precise? Is it possible? And, can they do it?
Tell me more about that keep it from being personal part. What does that mean? So focus on the task, not the person?
Exactly. So, another Sherpa tool we have is separate the person from the issue. So when you're talking to somebody, how do I not make it about Ian the person? How do I make it about what's actually the issue going on? And so really thinking about that, not personally attacking somebody, but really saying, hey, Ian, you were late today. What happened there? Not Ian's always late and it's driving me crazy. Why are you doing that?
Yeah. Those are really good tips. So do you have a good, without saying names, I love stories because I think stories really help illustrate. Do you have a success story where implementing strong accountability measures really helped transform a team's performance?
Absolutely. I have this amazing client. I loved working with her. She recently became COO at this huge digital media company, and she really wanted to start out in a good place. She knew from the past that the team that she was coming on to really had some issues with accountability and just, finger pointing, a lot of blame going on, a lot of things like that.
That's not my job.
That's not my job. She was supposed to, all of the things. So what she had me do, I was working with her just as a one-on-one coach, and she had me come in. I just came in for 2 hours, and we really sat down and we did all of the rooms in our accountability house. And we had an accountability house workshop. And so, you have to start out with that level of trust, truth being told, confidentiality, being understood with this team. But by her coming in and doing that accountability workshop, so people really understood and could define their roles in front of one another and could have those honest conversations about, hey, what's been stopping me about being accountable in this? And, a lot of it's fear of uncertainty. Am I going to have a job tomorrow? What is this going to look like? I mean, real fears. So she had this amazing accountability workshop where her team just really showed up. And, the first thing they said to her afterwards, Ian, was, why didn't we do this sooner? Why haven't we done this before in our careers? And so she really kicked off her leadership just in a stellar way by starting with that accountability workshop.
That's awesome. What are some warning signs for somebody like that to say, I think we might have a problem with accountability inside this team or this organization?
Yeah, well, I think blame is a really obvious one. If you constantly have a team member coming to you and saying, hey, I didn't do this. It was really supposed to be Ian's job. Or, that's a very basic level of it. And I mean, and then you have the flip side, which is fear, which can be really deep, which it's just like, has your company gone through giant changes and things like this? So really looking at the big picture of what could be creating this lack of accountability, all the way down to the smaller, easier things to notice, like the finger pointing. So that would be your first indication that there's some issues going on.
So it sounds like Sherpa really has built this incredible set of tools to help with problems like accountability, as well as just across the coaching spectrum. What's a good piece of advice for somebody? We've talked about the accountability house, and I'm sure there's opportunities to dig more into that for people that are interested. Do you guys still? I know there were Sherpa books. Is that something that covers some of that content?
Absolutely, yes. We have Sherpa books available on our website, sherpa-library.com. So we have a ton of books. Be Don't Do is a great book to start with. That's a basic book. A little plug right here.
Ooh, very nice.
That's kind of your coaching 101 book. Like I said, me and my colleague, we're also kind of writing a Sherpa Guide Part 2. We've got the Sherpa Guide. We have multiple publications, I think more than 20 on the website available. We also have a whole executive presence series as well. So if you
Excellent.
know that you're dealing with perhaps a clarity issue, transparency, being present, poise, acumen, you can get one of those workbooks, and that's a great place to start with our materials.
So you said they're on the website, which is sherpa-library.com.
Mm-hmm.
Are they also on Amazon? Can people find them on Amazon as well?
I believe the Why It Matters book and Be Don't Do may be on Amazon now. I would recommend getting it from our website because I don't think we're providing it on Amazon.
Perfect. Excellent to know. So kind of wrapping up accountability, what's like one takeaway on accountability that, people could potentially start implementing today?
I would say start with those questions. Start with the questions. Really, really train your brain. And, it's really easy for me to say that to you, but really, really being conscious of the questions that you're asking your team and asking people, and start practicing with your family. But really try and drop that why question. Really focus on the what's, the how's. Those kind of questions can really, really set you free. We like to say as coaches that questions get you in or out of any situation. So I would say the art of asking questions is a great place to start, and really always wanting to come in with good intentions with your questions, and just for curiosity, for more information.
I think that why question is going to be the biggest thing I take away from today, because we've been trained to say why, to tell people why behind something to help them understand the importance. So that's always something that comes top of mind to me. Okay, why? Why is this not happening? But it sounds like that is the absolute worst question that you could ask when it comes to accountability.
I mean, especially I could talk about, like I said, I love this stuff. I could talk about it forever. But DISC styles, if, we have any listeners that are familiar with DISC work assessments, why does not cut it for a lot of those DI S's and C's. I mean, it may fulfill a C tendency, but the rest of them, it will not. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's great advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. So kind of moving, bigger picture, maybe outside of accountability in the world of coaching, what's one of the best pieces of business advice that you've ever received, Dani, or that you like to give?
Well, my two favorites to give, and they're going to sound very simple again, but they're very complex if you start thinking about them, is number one, you cannot control anybody but yourself.
That's a good one.
As leaders, especially, and in our personal lives, we think we have this ability to control what others are doing, where in actuality, you can only control yourself. So always going back to that. And my second one is nobody thinks the way that you do. So oftentimes, like you said, I just like to ask why, because it's what I want to know. I want to know why. But that doesn't mean that this person talking in front of you will answer that or thinks that way or is even on that plane. So that's why the art of asking questions to the team is so valuable, because you get so much more than you could ever imagine from people when you ask questions and when you don't have that assumption that they understand what you're talking about.
Those are really good pieces of advice. And I'm just sitting here thinking, like, I have 3 children, so you can only control yourself is really important. Like, you work on controlling you, and everybody else controls themselves.
The ultimate humblers. They will teach us absolutely that you can only control yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Dani, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time to share this information on accountability with me. I've got a lot that I can, I think, take from this and focus on why being the biggest thing to remove from my accountability vocabulary.
We'll follow up with that and make sure you're accountable.
I appreciate this. See, hold me accountable for it. So, Dani, where can people find Sherpa Library online, and where can they connect with you if they have any follow-up questions or are interested in more on coaching?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I would definitely check out our new Sherpa website, www.sherpa-library.com. If you're interested in messaging me personally, you can just go on LinkedIn, connect with me, and we can have a discussion. Also, there are forums on our website if you have more questions. But coaching, I mean, it really can help bring a team cohesively back together.
And on LinkedIn, just to help, it's not Dani Redder. You go by Danielle Redder on LinkedIn. If somebody's trying to
Danielle Redder. Yep. Dani is my name. You can call me that. Or Danielle works. So.
Excellent. Well, Dani, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you being part of the SpotOn Spotlight podcast. And I'm looking forward to following up with you. And hopefully you can message me in a week and say, how are you doing with that why question? Hold me accountable for it.
Coach Danny will be on it. So
I love it.
thank you again for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Perfect. Thanks, Danny.